It is our 50th episode. So our guest today is the king of abandonment.
It's good to be back, guys.
He has been working as an operational excellence manager.
What exactly is that?
Leadership, even from the bottom up, will identify things that are like, this is an obstacle.
What is lean in a clear definition?
To be lean is ultimately two things.
What does a GC really do?
General contractors aren't builders. They're just master facilitators.
What are the top three things in a big company that small companies could implement?
Ultimately, your people are your biggest resource, and so you have to invest in them.
Can you talk about one of those times that you screwed up?
Yeah, man. I gotta say,
welcome to Beers with Contractors.
Terra. How you doing today, buddy?
Doing well. How are you doing, Will?
I'm doing good. We're back on another episode of Beers with Contractors. We're Contractors kick ass, tradies kick ass. Good to hear and see all of our 6 listeners out there piping in. It's a benchmark episode today. Do you know what that is, Terry?
It is momentous, if I have to say any words.
It is astronomical how our livers have survived this long. It is our 50th episode. Man, can we make it to 100?
We can.
As I sip my beer again.
Maybe.
Hey, before we get started, of course, you know the routine. The new subscribers out there, Koshala Servsawaren, Soul 56, Just Jonathan, Michael Mantos, Jamie JJ7, Harrison Roman, Jack Daniels Whiskey 07, which that's actually my brother. Thanks, bro, for subscribing. C. James, Mark of Mayobi. Thank you guys for subscribing, and appreciate you guys listening in. So, Terry, I know that because of your prestigious workplace at OSU, which is something that, you know, runs insanely efficient, right? It always runs smooth in academia, right?
Always.
Have you heard of this new task force that Elon Musk has put together, this Department of Government Efficiency?
Oh, they're going to have their work cut out for them. It's going
to be a slaughter, bro. I mean, but what I liked about it is you typically find that these agencies, they put together something and then they just never go away. But the whole intent, I guess, of this, you know, agency is to actually expire. Because why look for waste and then like continue to use up things? So I'm interested. Are you going to apply?
No. I'm assuming that everyone that is going to apply is going to be much more qualified and or intelligent than I, but I think it would be fun to get in there and get into the weeds and see what can be cut.
You know what I think we should do is we should make a bet, you and I, to both apply to this Department of Governmental Efficiency and just as a bet, just do it. And then just randomly see if all of a sudden we get hired. We show up with our, you know, our beers in hand. We want to talk about construction. We're going to pick apart all the government projects, right?
Oh, we could do the Step Brothers. Both tucks it up.
We show up to the interview together. Pam. Of course, she had to quote Step Brothers. I love it. So, but yeah, it's one of those where we're constantly in the small business world. We're always looking at like, hey, how can we be more efficient? How can we cut costs? So, you know, I love it, and I'm sure the people that are going to be involved with this are going to be mainly, I would like to think, from the entrepreneurial realm of business. So, but either way, to 50 episodes, buddy. Congrats. So today, you already know who our guest is today. And, you know, I think you made the joke of it was like bringing back the ex or something.
Yeah, it is. It's you know, all I can say is I'm still here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you stand by your man. Is that the song? So, yeah, let me get into this bio. So our guest today is the king of abandonment. He will leave you in a moment's notice. You know, he is questionable, at least on the ethics side. But, you know, he's money hungry. He's tinfoil hat wearing. He's a really frustrating individual to work with, either virtually or in close proximity. And, you know, he's got tons of records. And sure, you listeners, if you search in your local courthouse, you will find his name listed in several different areas. I am joking, of course. For our 50th episode, I had to go back to the beginning. I want to welcome today our good friend and very special guest, someone who used to be the host on the show and is now returning on the other side of the table as a guest. And for those that know, that's Dillon. Dillon Cott's back. And he has been working lately, transitioning into a new role at FlintCo as an operational excellence manager. So we're going to have to figure out what the hell that is. That may need to go in the Department of Governmental Efficiency audit. But really what he's doing is he's optimizing workflow inside of the company with a diverse construction background. Dillon obviously has tons of knowledge just in people, processes, performance, things like that. So welcome to this week's Beers with Contractors. Dillon, good to have you back, buddy. Happy 50th anniversary.
What a warm welcome. It's good to be back, guys.
Did you like the first bio intro or the second
Yeah,
one?
really, Terry's bio is great. Yeah, I think the three of us can all get along, Terry. The X is back in town, but you can stick around. We can all jive.
We can co-parent.
Yeah.
It's going to be important.
Yeah, we can co-parent, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's great to see you guys. Happy to be here.
So listen, I want this episode to be productive. So both of you keep your Will Blake insults to a minimum because we need to get stuff done today for our 4, 5, 6 listeners.
Well, I was sold on the idea that this is going to be a Blake roast. I mean, we're going to bring up all the skeletons in your closet, and he should know most of them.
Yeah, well, Drake's going to have a great time editing this episode because it's over. Thanks for listening, everybody.
There is nothing else. I do want to just take a moment to just say thank you, Terry, and I'm sorry. Now Terry knows my pain of having Will as a co-host.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything that could go wrong, Will dominating the mic, you know.
So I want to understand, when you were working with Will, would he randomly just screw up the settings, move the mic, mess up the camera, all that, right? Would he do that to you, or is it just me?
No, it's definitely everyone that he works with. It's not even just us two. Like Drake, our producer on this show, would specifically give Will directions. Don't touch anything. And I think that was just an invitation to play. He was like, well, I just want to see what happens. I just want to play with it.
I mean, the only thing I can reckon it to is I have small children, and they're better behaved than Will.
Hey, man, I'm a tinkerer. I like to tinker. Leave me alone.
Honestly,
hey, hold on. Let's
his defense isn't even that like he shouldn't be doing it or something. It's just like, no, I'm just a tinker. That's just who I am. There's nothing wrong with it.
I'm not going to apologize. And hell, honestly, back up. I paid for all this equipment, so back the hell up, both of you.
Let's pull that
show.
card.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, all right.
Beers with Will. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, you guys should be so happy to be spending this time with me. So,
That's
all right,
right,
let's get to some productivity.
Here we go.
Back to work, guys. Concentrate. Focus. So, honestly, Dillon, some of our listeners out there don't know you because, you know, they've been listening to Terry and I, and they probably saw you on some of our shorts and stuff, but give everybody kind of the quick rundown of Dillon Cott and, you know, where you came from, experience, all that stuff.
Yeah, totally. Kind of diverse background. I've tried a number of different fields, if you will, but landed in construction and found that I love construction a lot. It's an exciting field. Nothing's really the same, and it's just cool to build things. I actually had a little bit of time working in a university in admissions. I had some time ministry path as well. And then, you know, landed in construction, got my start in electrical, did some time as an apprentice there, a couple moves, got into working with Will in his foundation repair company, and then kind of came up through in human resources of all things. Didn't expect it at the time, and kind of just fell in love with the field a little bit, and it was still, you know, construction adjacent and just cool to serve in that way. Some time around a software company, Unison Works, with Will, and it's really cool to be able to interact with construction companies that are trying to improve their labor costs by incentivizing crews. Anyone that's listening, Will has some awesome stuff on that. Now I to work for a general contractor. So I'm an operational excellence manager. Can share what that means here in a little bit, but get to work with all of the locations in FlintCo, which is a GC out of Tulsa, and then just a number of different employees that I get to interact with and try to improve workflows. And been all around construction, such a cool field, and just happy to be here to kind of shoot the breeze with you.
Well, Dillon, you talked about operational excellence, and I know that's something that the office of Doge is not going to come after. Well, what exactly is that?
Yeah. It could mean something different to a lot of different companies, but I first started with FlintCo. I was a lean manager, which means something really distinct in the manufacturing world. In manufacturing, that's like, hey, how can we look for some really incremental way that we cut a cost, we improve an efficiency, we optimize something. This little 15-minute improvement is going to save us X number of dollars. That's in the manufacturing side. And we try to use that in construction, find ways that we can be more efficient, ways that we can see teams getting work done faster, safer, and really just increasing activity. That was the original title. And then, long story short, kind of going to work for Alberisi, which is FlintCo's parent company. And so I'm going to be able to serve both companies in this new role of operational excellence manager. In a nutshell, what is it? Leadership, and even from the bottom up, will identify things in the company that are like, this is an obstacle. This is a barrier or a roadblock to us being successful. And it is move that obstacle, to move that roadblock would be a big lift for someone that's around that. We're going to have someone else, namely my title, come in and help lead that project, that transformation project, to move the obstacle. Naturally, I'm not the one that works there. So let's say it's something that's really, getting in the way of a superintendent's success, or it's a way that, we want to improve the way we do this financial transaction. I'm going to work with the people that are adjacent to that, make sure that those roadblocks get moved.
Yeah, so you mentioned lean before, and I'm a fan of that stuff. I also know it's a pain in the ass to implement. But because it's so partial to manufacturing, break it down for us Neanderthals like Terry. What is lean in a clear definition? No, I'm joking, Terry. You're good.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Performance, the bonus system designed to increase profits for your construction company. Performance incentivizes your production team for more efficient installs and rewards them when they beat your preset labor goals. So no more milking the clock and no more unnecessary gas station trips. Performance drives your team to work harder and smarter. Every construction company on Performance has seen a 7% decrease in direct labor costs or more. Click the link in the description or visit performance.co to schedule your demo today. That's PER4 MANCE.co. Reward your team, retain your team, grow your profits. Performance.
To be lean is ultimately two things. It's about continuous improvement, and it's respect for people. So a lot of people think like it's just improvement, like we're just trying to be efficient, but who cares about the person that it's going to affect? Ultimately, that if you're just doing efficiency moves for efficiency's sake, someone's going to get burned by that, and you're probably going to have an inefficiency called turnover, right? So you have to respect the people that are involved. So lean is continuous improvement and respect for people, and every company, every organization will do that a little bit differently. The company that made lean really popular is Toyota. It's a classic book called The Toyota Way. That if you don't have the time to read, you can find some great cliff notes online, and there's a lot of examples where they, both on a leadership level, but frontline employees are suggesting, here's something that we could do to improve. And I'll give one example that I think is really cool. Toyota has this thing in their manufacturing facilities called Andon cord, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, ANDON. And basically, it's like a pull cord, like you're kind of on a bus and there's a rope that you could pull to say, hey, bus driver, stop here. This is where I want out. Well, that pull cord goes through the entire manufacturing facility, and there's, hundreds of people along the line, and they all are told by their management, you have the responsibility and the right to pull that cord anytime you see a defect, because each person has their individual task, right? Mm-hmm. And so when someone sees that the task before them or two tasks before them, they mess something up, it may not even be something big, they pull that cord and the entire manufacturing facility shuts down. Like they just stop the work. Yeah. And you're saying to yourself, like, well, that doesn't sound efficient, because they've just totally ceased. They know that when they're turning out hundreds or thousands of that widget, that if they don't fix that defect, they're going to have way bigger costs later on. It's kind of cool. If you look into it, you're like, how many times in a day do you think someone pulls that cord? And I would originally guess like, oh, like 3 or 4 times a day, maybe.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, no, they pull that thing 1,000 times plus in a day. And then they just fire it back up after they've isolated what the defect is. The management will start to look at the employees and say, there's something wrong if you're only pulling it 300-400 times a day. Because we know that you're close enough to the work and you have the way to solve, whatever the deficiency or inefficiency is. Lean in a nutshell is finding those things that are kinks in armor or like a snag in us being successful as a company.
And this is so funny. Like you mentioned the Toyota way, Dylan. There's a great book by Paul Akers called 2 Second Lean. Have you read that yet?
I haven't read it, no, but I've heard of it.
And it's funny. It's a book about being lean, and it's like, oh, this better be a good book. And yeah, it's small. It's like, why make a big, thick binder that takes 17 months to read, but it's fast. And this guy, Paul Akers, is a fanatic about the Toyota way and, efficiencies. So much so that even like he got tired of having a salt and pepper shaker. So he just has one shaker that has salt and pepper in it. And it's just like those little things that just are like, oh, yeah, I guess that works, right? And that's a great read for anybody that hasn't seen that. And I'm glad that you're involved in it.
One comment to that too, Will, is like, I think so often we just get complacent about the things that we see. And we're just like, oh, that is just the way it is. I have to accept it. That's what my boss had before me. And so I can't say anything. So it's really about empowering people to be like, hey, there might actually be a better way.
No, but you talk about empowering people. I mean, the idea of doing it so that they can improve the process, improve the product, or even having them look at an unsafe action is so important, because you give the lowest man on the totem pole the power to stop that project and do what is needed.
Yeah. And it's good that you pointed out too, like the safety aspect of it, because I think, again, when you hear lean and you're like, oh, we're just trying to be more efficient. A lot of people in construction, especially, that when you're just starting out, you cut corners, so that makes you unsafe. Again, like a truly lean thing is something that's going to have respect for you and your team, not cut corners to the extent where, it's going to be unsafe.
Yeah, because you want that crew, you want that individual to be able to come back day after day and work that project. And it only takes one unforeseen accident to derail everything.
Well, and me being the accident-prone one of the group, to be clear, like I would be tripping and accidentally pulling that cord on accident consistently, and to know that it's encouraged by the managers to pull it 300 to 400 times a day, then it's like, oh, okay, I think I can fit in pretty damn well at Toyota now. But hey, in the broad spectrum, Dylan, I think we're focusing on lean, but your job is, all encompassing of not just lean and it's people efficiencies, it's process efficiencies. And for those that don't know FlintCo, that's a massive company. I mean, so that's one of the reasons I wanted you on the show today. Like you've gotten to see working for a small, privately held, family-owned business to now a much larger organization. So, if you were to summarize, what are maybe the top 3 things that you have seen in a big company that small companies could implement just right away?
Yeah. Big companies only become big because they started small and they did the small things right, and like the small company can take from the big company that ultimately your people are your biggest resource. Your people are the most important thing in your company. And so you have to invest in them. They need to know their value and that it's worth, staying the course. And I think, one thing I've experienced in my time with FlintCo is every role in the company is very clearly defined. So you don't have, the stepping on toes, but also every role in the company has like a clear trajectory of where it could go. So if you're starting out as project engineer, that I could become an assistant project manager, a project manager, so on and so forth. And here are all the things that I need to learn to kind of get to the next level. Now that small, construction company can take that and say, yeah, I may only have 10 spots on the team, but I know that there's at least one rung up the ladder that you could eventually get to, or that 10-person company can become 20 or 30 people. Here's what that will look like if you stay the course with me. So that's number one. I think the people are the most important. I think you have to take safety seriously. And we just mentioned not cutting corners, and I know a couple, small general contractors local to me that are friends, and I've just heard stories, and I'm like, oh man, oh please, please, nothing happen. Like if one of your workers goes down or something happens to property, whatever it is, like it's going to be really bad. And I think a big company like FlintCo has a lot of resources around safety, and that's both in manpower, but also just, equipment, technology, software. And I think there's this middle ground where, yeah, like a small company can't invest all of those things, but you need to be able to say like, hey, if I'm not safe, we're not going to go anywhere, right? Like the team expects it. So taking safety seriously is number two. Probably number three is you got to know how to sell the company and build value. And I can say that from an outside perspective at FlintCo, there's 8 different locations, and the Tulsa office is just in a totally different place than like Denver or Houston office, because Tulsa's been established for 100 plus years. People know us in the market. There's the tall buildings on the skyline that they're like, yeah, that's a FlintCo project, right? Where when you come into a new market and you don't have that, you don't have work that's just kind of showing up at the door. And so you need to know that the small company, like in order to get there, you're going to have to make some sacrifices. And I see that in the way that FlintCo operates in those new markets, that they're like, yeah, we're going to take these kind of crappy jobs, like, or these things that we're probably just going to eat it on, only to build the relationship so that a year, 2, 3 years from now, that, $10,000 remodel in a school that was just, we thought was kind of dumb, is going to turn into a new school building for a district, right? So you got to have a sight to the future when you're doing that. And the small businesses can really scale when they're looking at the future advantages.
Yeah. Hey, I want to know who taught you about how to sell your company, like, Dillon. I just like when you're talking to candidates and things like that.
Right.
Did you read that in a book?
That's hilarious. Yeah. So
Yeah. Sorry, I had to throw that out there.
that's great. Will actually interviewed me for a role, I don't know, 5 years ago to work for him. And I got to give a lot of credit to Will for kind of my professional career. And I think this is great for everyone that's listening, that like when you talk to someone about your company, like if you're not alive about it, it's not going to show. And Will is one of those guys, and Terry too. Like when you're passionate, people are going to feel it, and they're going to want to be around it, and they're going to gravitate to it.
Old silver tongue Will. That's old
Yeah.
silver tongue. But hey, I want you to dig deeper, Dillon, because you talked about like, hey, you are in this role, and in order to get to another role that may or may not exist in a defined amount of time, but if it does get there, obviously you want to have all these things done. What are some of the things that they have there that says like, hey, if you want to get from this level to this level, I mean, is it reading a book? Is it OSHA 10? I mean, what are some of the things that you see there that somebody could copy paste in their own company?
Yeah. So take the role that you're thinking of, entry level installer, your foreman, whatever your role is on your team, and write down, what are the 15 or 20 things that role does, on a day-to-day basis. And then, you want to categorize those things into, here's the most important ones that, if someone really executes these, they're going to be excellent at their job. And once you've done that, you've just created kind of like frankly, an HR list of the tasks associated with that job description, right? And now you have the blueprint for that role, and everyone can get a score on, like a 1 to 5 scale of how well they're doing those things. And they can self-evaluate that. You can evaluate them. Their peers can evaluate them. So I would just start there, because it's not completely objective because you're rating them, right? But you have a good baseline of the tasks. And then you can share with them, if we see a lot of 4s and 5s here, like you're promotion worthy to move up to this next thing. Or, this next thing doesn't exist yet, but I see it looking like this. And so I need you to be at 4s and 5s on all these things in order for me to create that for you. And then we hire someone to backfill you. So I think just starting there. One thing that's kind of cool that I've seen is a career matrix, where you sort of like, you just probably could Google career matrix and see something where, basically it's if this, then this, and you just keep moving up the almost like a flow chart of positions throughout a company. And if you need ideas of like how do you build that, just find someone in your market that does it and just ask them like, what are your job descriptions? What are your current roles? And see if I can just kind of steal some of that.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that, the idea of communicating with maybe a competitor or someone else in your market. I mean, I've never run into the individual who's just like tight-lipped on any of it, right? They're willing to talk about their business.
Yeah, totally. And if they're not, then that's like, just move on. Like you'll find somebody else. And I think a lot of people want to help. And I think people are just flattered to be asked. They're like, oh yeah, sure. And if you're coming from a humble place where you're just like, I want to help my people, like who's going to say no to that? It's probably not the right person if they are saying no.
So, Dylan, you've moved into working with an exceptionally large general contractor, and while FlintCo is very well known here in the state of Oklahoma, what does a GC really do, and where do you see them fitting into that market?
Yeah, totally. So a general contractor, if we take a step back and just say like construction in general is full of a lot of unknowns. Like there are a lot of unexpected things that happen in construction. If you've done your own little bathroom remodel or something at your house, like you know like something is bound to go wrong. Every project I do involves 3 or 4 Lowe's trips or Home Depot trips just because something's forgotten, right? Now imagine that on a scale of $100 million project or $1 billion project. You know, you amplified the number of places that the unexpected can hit you, and every place that it'll hit you, it's going to have a cost one way or another. And so a general contractor ultimately, like, they take on that risk and responsibility. So a general contractor is going to be the one that is finding all the people to do the work. They're managing the work. They're managing the materials that are associated with that work. I have a buddy of mine who kind of tongue in cheek says like, yeah, general contractors aren't builders. They're just master facilitators. And, you know, there's like some level of truth to that.
Yeah, I hope we don't get that chopped down into short form. You're going to get tons of hate on TikTok.
I know. But there is a level of truth to it that like you are taking on a lot of risk. And a good general contractor will take that risk on and say, yeah, we welcome it because we feel confident that I'm going to hire the right subs to do the right trades to do all of the, you know, different specialty work, that the material is going to show up and it's going to be, you know, managed and stored well and installed properly. And that my owner is whoever's buying this building or buying whatever's being constructed, that they're going to be happy with this work. Because if I'm, you know, over budget or not on time, there could be, you know, legal ramifications to that. Like that's what the general contractor is taking on, is that risk that it's, you know, off budget or off time.
Yeah, and I see this where it's like this whole issue where it's like, hey, I'm a GC, even on a residential level. Let's just break it down to a residential level. And it's like, hey, I'm a GC, and they don't have very good organizational skills. They don't have good people skills, but that's really the value of their job, is they're good coordinators and playing quarterback for these subs and making sure the numbers are right, making sure the customer's being communicated, make sure the material's there. And that disorganization leads to a lot of what I think we see in the market, which is a bad reputation for just general contractors all around the world. So
Yeah. I'll give one example of this: BIM modeling. So you building information modeling, you get your 3D models of, let's say you're building a new hospital. And you could have a fairly advanced plumber that has like 3D models of, you know, what their scope of work is on that hospital. And the electrician may or may not as well. They, you know, create their own little 3D model of what's going on inside that building. But as a general contractor, you would say, hey, I potentially want every trade that could have a clash in the building. So mechanical, plumbing, electrical, so forth. I want to see all your models. I want to compile them together. And I want to look through and find those clashes before you guys just start installing your pipe and running into each other, right? And so, because, you know, every clash that could happen out in the field could be, you know, wasted time and rework. And so that's just a really simple example as a general contractor to just say, hey, someone's got to facilitate that, because the plumber is not going to go to the electrician and be like, hey, can I look at your models and like compare how they all worked out? The general contractor would be the one to bring that together.
Well, and if you think about construction, and project manager, general contractor, if the design is perfect and everyone does their job right, you don't really need to be there. So your job is solving problems.
Yeah, yeah. And the design is never right though.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's design guys out there listening that are like, yeah, I know some design guys, and it's stressful because it's like you're predicting the future, right? And there's always so with the complexity of even a house, there's something that's gonna be off, right?
Right. Yeah, you could shake the 8 ball and like you're not going to get it right. And so whenever there's that thing that comes up that's like these two things don't fit together, or how exactly does this, architect expect us to build this? There's going to be a lot of clarification that's needed, and the GC is one of those, problem solvers that needs to go find the answer so that people can keep building. I've heard one person in the company, I love this. He talked about how like at the end of the day, I just want to tell every superintendent, just keep going. Like, don't let the thing stop you. Because the moment you've stopped, like, oh, we're in trouble, right? Whatever that predicament is, whatever that problem is, like, if you just stopped and the work doesn't go, we're going to lose. So you just got to keep going.
Yeah, but it's also that idea that like traditional construction is, if you have a problem or there's a problem with that plan set, you're blaming the architect, you're blaming the designer. You're trying to say it's them, not me. I mean, I think where we're moving to in construction is, all right, there is an issue. Let's work together to make sure the customer is happy.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's kind of another level of like facilitation. We realize that it's not going to be helpful if we point fingers at the architect that we still need to work with in the future. We need to come to the table and, there are some new, more novel ideas about the way you could build like integrated design build contracts where basically if the architect and the builder or the GC, we all win together or we all lose together. And so that those sorts of, contract setups can help ensure that people feel like they're on the same team instead of, yeah, we're just going to point fingers, because we all know that construction's notorious for it's someone else's fault every time.
Oh yeah, there's never a trim carpenter that's like, well, the painters will take care of it. There's never a framer being like, well, the sheetrock guys, they'll take care of it, right? It's always it's passing the buck. But hold on, and that's in a residential example where it's like, all right, the framers will be like, all right, the finishers will take care of it, right? Is it the opposite in large commercial where it's like, oh, well, no, it was the design's fault?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. I mean, I think some would say that it's the design's fault, but if in the words of like a Jocko Willink, like extreme ownership, I've seen where that's turned and it's like, well, actually, it's my fault for not managing the design team very well, because I could have gotten on top of that 4 months ago and gotten an answer or resolution to that problem, and we could keep going right now. But because I mismanaged, then we're stagnant.
And I think there's a little bit of a disconnect. Like if we're looking at a commercial project, right, and you have a complete screw up, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And it's a big proportion of the project. If you're on a residential project, any screw up is going to be very important to that homeowner. I mean, it might only be $5,000, but it's going to be significant to that owner. And so you need to treat it with the same level of importance as you would something at a very high dollar value in commercial projects.
Yeah, the residential side has when someone has to come home to it, it has a very kind of soft, tender feel about it. Like you got to massage it a little bit in your communication. With Terry's giving me the look, but like, yeah, you got to find a way to be a little wordsmith. Like, hey, I know we screwed this up, or I know that this isn't going right, but we're gonna work it out for you.
Oh, and the guys in the field are great at that. They're like, hey,
Yeah,
look,
exactly.
you invited me to feel like this was a mistake. No, it's like, hey, buddy, you screwed this up. You SOB. Yeah, but that's okay. So Dillon, you're talking about this, and I just want to kind of add two things real quick. First off, you guys have been great. We were going on a good plus 30 plus minutes here. Haven't been too insulting to me, so hopefully that's not front loading in the back.
We can change that.
Yeah, good job behaving, boys. But the second thing is this: a lot of companies look at like larger organizations, like FlintCo, and they think, man, well, they have the money to spend on software and all these systems and processes and different departments. But I'm sure you probably witnessed or experienced just some very simple processes that really don't cost anything. It's just behavioral processes there that people can implement in their business. You mentioned roll ladders before, but what's some other basic cultural or, kind of cadences that you've experienced that people can implement in the smaller companies?
Yeah. So we actually do some really small projects where we don't have it in the budget to do some of the really fancy softwares and stuff. So we experience that too. But I would say that some of the small practices they revolve around the way that you meet with people. And so something as simple as a daily huddle in the morning is like that. That's a no brainer. Like any company can do that. And it takes 10, 15 minutes. And what that can look like is, hey, let's get the crew together. Let's talk about safety first. And let's just say, hey, here are the hazards that we're going into today. Here's the things that we need to keep an eye out for. Cool. What are you guys doing today? What are you going to knock out? I want to hear you commit to it. How did yesterday go? We can review that in case, it went over or it is done. So, something as simple as a daily huddle gets a lot of traction. I think from a management standpoint, every company can just talk to their employees. And, if I started in an electrical company where, it was very small. We hung out with each other. We all knew each other really well. We knew each other's families. But I can say that I never had in almost a year and a half, 2 years, never had a manager say, "Hey, Dillon, what do you think about this? Like, what do you have any ideas for improvement here? Where do you want to go with this?" And so, like, that's a missed opportunity, right? You got to shoot your shot with your employees, and that's a missed opportunity for a small business. And then maybe finally, I would just say, yeah, you may not have the budget to bring in these big softwares or whatever it may be, but there's probably someone out there that has kind of jimmy rigged a way to just like kind of make it work. And so like, yeah, there are really nice softwares for something like scheduling, like a general contractor scheduling software that brings together all of the trades and all of the things that they've got going on and all of these milestones and benchmarks. Great. Yeah, you could be paying, a fair bit of money for your small budget, or you could probably find online some really incredible Excel spreadsheets that you just need to use to get going instead of the piece of paper that you're using to figure out when people are doing things right now.
I'm glad you said that. And Terry, you introduced me to Martin at J.E. Dunn. And we got a chance to experience the hospital build project here locally. And they have their project listed out on a Gantt chart in a software, very sophisticated software. But Terry, did you go to their job site trailer there? They still had it on a large dry erase marker board with sticky notes. And they didn't need that, but they were mentioning it's just the physical activity of like seeing the progress and making adjustments. And I was just like, wow, this is a massive company, and you guys are still managing it off dry erase marker boards and post-it notes. And they were making a Gantt chart out of post-it notes. And they were like, no, we still manage it, but like this just gets that involvement with the team and also back to ownership. And I just thought that was cool as hell. But yeah, and it's funny, Dillon, I brought up, you were talking about this role thing, and I couldn't remember who it was, but a good friend of mine at a guttering company shared with me they have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 level skill ladder.
Huh.
So when you come into the company, it's like you're an apprentice, and the outline for an apprentice is 12 weeks. And in order to get through that, they've got 3 levels. First one is understanding basic hand tools, shop maintenance, job site maintenance, strong work ethic, and read this book. Level 2, understanding gutter teardown, gutter cleaning, OSHA 10 certified, job site setup. And then it's like, and this is a gutter company. And I thought this was just so cool. And it sounds so similar to what you've done on the roll side up there. But now I want to flip it a little bit. So now that you've been in a small kind of family-owned operation, and now you're working in a bigger organization, what are some of the things that the small companies do well that the bigger companies can't?
Oh man, yeah. Doge is where I'm going to come back to. You guys started out with the Department of Government Efficiency, and I think Elon's a funny guy and really interesting to follow in business and stuff. So it's kind of up my alley to see what happens there. I think a lot of big organizations, they forget their kind of startup beginnings and they just start adding on things, extra processes. I was just talking to someone this week who's this, more senior level employee in our company. And one of his frustrations was just like, man, there are just so many places that people have to put in reporting. It's like they got to go here to put this reporting in, and they got to talk about safety here and financial there. And how can we simplify that? Like it's just too much. And just as like the Doge thing is like looking at clearing out the bureaucracy, small businesses don't have a whole lot of that. Like there's just no wiggle room there. And so, big organizations have to look to the small there and say like, how can we be almost like a startup in terms of our efficiency?
Now, are you finding that in those like more remote markets where you're less established, like the Denvers of the world, that they're just more nimble and agile?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they have the startup flexibility to just kind of like, we'll just try it. And, we're probably going to get burned a few times. And the longer you live in business, the more established your organization becomes, the more it's like, oh, now we really care about risk management, right? And there's value to that. Like there's great reason why, big general contractor would care about risk management, right? You don't want to get sunk. But you don't think about that at all when you're just starting out. You're just like, how do I keep moving forward?
Well, it's like, when you're living in college or fresh out of high school and you're living on your own, right? It's one of those things that like that 1-bedroom apartment and that free couch you found on the corner of the street and that ramen noodle soup is like you're living the high life, right? And then you fast forward a few years, you get a little soft, you get a little comfortable. You need to get that hunger back in you, man.
Right.
That's funny you mentioned about the couch. I think we had those here in the office for a while. Dillon, you remember?
Oh yeah, yeah. We lived that life. Will literally found a couch that a neighbor was throwing out, and we took it in. Really not sure that was a good idea. Probably not a good idea.
Very rarely sat on that couch, and
Yeah.
After looking at it for a while, I'm like, yeah, that was a bad decision.
When you try to vacuum it and Febreze it, it just still looks it's questionable.
It was awful. Hey, so hold on. So now we got a segue. Dillon, we always have a final question, but I'm going to do it different today. I'm going to let Terry ask the final question, and let's just see how he does. Well, you rank him from 1 to 10. Anybody listening, put it in the comments. By the way, yeah, just throw a 1 to 10 on there on how well Terry did today on asking the final question. If he did good enough, I'll let him ask it more often.
Ooh, it's like getting a promotion, right?
Ooh.
So, Dillon, you know how we like to end this, right? So we all screw up time to time. But can you talk about one of those times that you screwed up so bad that you can actually say, I learned something from that?
It's funny. I was not ready for that. I've done this podcast so many episodes, and I've never. I didn't even think about this. I wasn't ready for it.
Pull the cord.
Yeah, pull the cord. Yeah, what are we doing, Terry? I would give that a probably an 11 on a scale of 1 to 10. You did that way better than Will would ever do it. He's like a 2.
Don't divert. Answer the question, bro.
Now, Dillon, you are perfectly fine saying that working with Will could possibly be one of those biggest screw ups that I've ever had.
That is a huge screw up. Yeah. Man, I gotta say, I think one screw up that I've had, and I would say this is something that's like a one-time deal that I've had in my professional life. It's something that I personally struggle with, and I think that I can continue to grow in, is just being honest with myself on when things are going great and when things aren't going as great. And so I think I could say I saw this, first maybe 8-10 years ago in a job where, just it didn't feel like the right fit. And, you just keep digging in and you kind of white knuckle it. And at the end of the day, like that's not going to be the right thing. And so no one's going to be satisfied or happy in that. And so probably I don't know if I could say I could brag about it, but I would say like that's my big professional screw-ups is just a lack of honesty with myself. Because I think really I just like I want to show up and show out. Like I'm like, okay, well I want to perform well and do what's expected. But I think that we can sometimes deceive ourselves and just let things slide by. So it's been a big kind of learning thing in my life.
Well, I've seen you want to show up and make that happen, and that's one of your endearing qualities. I'll end on a positive note. I'm very happy that you kind of joined us today, but also just kind of sharing it because you've gotten to see it from so many levels. And I know it's weird because you're a manager, or I'm sorry, what I closed out the notes. What is the title?
Operational excellence manager. Yeah.
Operational excellence manager. What a
Right.
title, by the way. You just threw that.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, but where do people learn more about this stuff? Can they reach out to you? Where they learn about FlintCo? What's all that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn, so Dillon Cott, C-O-T-T. You can message me on LinkedIn. Be happy to talk to you about whether it's operational excellence, lean, HR, or you're looking for a job, whatever it is. FlintCo is probably hiring, or Alberici is likely hiring as well.
Yeah.
So that being said, do you have anything for me? Because I'm looking at making a transition away from Will relatively quickly.
Yeah, Terry, you can come anytime you want. We're ready for you.
Yeah. When he started talking about all the detail in construction, like large scale commercial, I'm like, oh, I'll screw that up in a heartbeat. Like, oh yeah, I read the plans, just do it.
Yeah.
I did not read the plans.
Will is the master of the wing it version of general contracting, but you know what? It's generally worked out pretty well for him. So it doesn't work out for everybody.
I think there is a correlation in construction, and why we have problems is we can originate all of this down to the basic instructions when men are putting something together. So, for example, like, are you reading the instructions? No, I'm just looking at the pictures. We all do that shit. And then we magnify it into large-scale general construction. So it's like, that's why we have so many issues. But anyway, Dillon, I appreciate you. I am so happy for you in your new role. We do miss you, us and now our 7 listeners. But, Terry and I we're holding our own, right, buddy?
One day at a time.
Terry, I got to give you all the credit in the world because when I was helping host this show, we were like at 3 listeners, and you've doubled the audience.
Yeah.
It wasn't Will; it was definitely you.
Oh,
No,
bro.
moving to 7. That's a big step forward.
Well, on that note, that's what's exciting. We actually have our first line of merch being tested right now, so we will be having shirts and hats and stickers that say Contractors Kick Ass, the trades kick ass for Beers with Contractors. We're excited about that coming out. And Dillon, I just appreciate you. It's good to see your face, buddy. And everybody out there listening, I appreciate all of you, including our new subscribers. So if you get a chance, like, subscribe, hit the notifications, and also comment. I actually listen, look at, and comment on all that stuff. So we appreciate you guys, and we will see you next week on another episode of Beers with Contractors. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beers with Contractors. We hope you enjoyed our chat as much as we did. Before we say our final goodbyes, a friendly reminder. Beers with Contractors encourages responsible drinking. If you choose to enjoy a beverage during our time together, please do so in moderation and only if you're of legal drinking age in your country or state. Furthermore, the advice and insights shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only. Always consult with professionals and experts in your field, and be sure to follow local laws and regulations regarding licensing and permits. We're here to help, entertain, and inspire, but your safety and compliance are important. So, as you head out into the world of construction and contracting, remember to build responsibly and make decisions that stand the test of time. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next episode of Beers with Contractors. Until then, cheers to your success.